In 2026, cruise travel has become both more expensive and more complicated. The cost of shore excursion mistakes is higher than ever. Today, I am walking you through 11 of them, one by one. Like and subscribe for straight cruise information every time. I worked on cruise ships for 7 years, and one of the things I watched from the inside, port after port, sailing after sailing, was how passengers handled shore excursions, and how consistently the same mistakes came up. Not small mistakes, mistakes that cost real money, ruined full port days, and in some cases created serious stress that followed people back onto the ship and colored the rest of their cruise. The shore excursion system on a cruise ship looks straightforward from the outside. You pick a tour, you pay for it, you go. But there is a significant gap between what passengers assume and what is actually happening, and that gap is exactly where these 11 mistakes live. Today, I am closing that gap for you completely. Mistake number 1 is booking every single shore excursion through the cruise line without comparing prices. This is the default behavior for most passengers, especially first-time cruisers, and the cruise line counts on it heavily. Ship-sponsored excursions are convenient and come with a well-advertised guarantee. If the tour runs late, the ship waits for you. That guarantee has real value, and I will come back to it. But the price premium attached to cruise line excursions is significant. On many itineraries, the exact same tour, same route, same guide, same experience, is available through a local operator at the destination for 30 to 50% less than the ship's price. I watched passengers pay $240 per couple for a catamaran trip in a Caribbean port, while an identical excursion run by a local company was available at the same dock for under $140 for two. The ship's version had a different logo on the ticket. That was essentially the entire difference. Before every port on your itinerary, spend 20 minutes researching what independent operators offer. TripAdvisor, Viator, and local tourism boards are good starting points. Read recent reviews, specifically about whether the independent operator has good time management. That is the one practical area where the ship's excursion has a structural advantage. You may find the ship's tour is genuinely the best value for a particular stop. Or you may save $100 per port without losing anything meaningful. Over a 7-day cruise with 5 port days, that adds up to real money. In just a moment, I am going to tell you about mistake number 4, the one that has left passengers stranded at a port with no way back to the ship, and the situation is more common than the cruise line will ever publicly acknowledge. Mistake number 2 is not reading the physical requirements before booking. Every shore excursion listing includes a physical difficulty rating and a description of what the tour involves. Most passengers scan the title, look at the photos, and book without reading the details carefully. I watched this cause real problems specifically for passengers over 60 who were not always aware that a tour rated as moderate might involve 45 minutes of walking on uneven cobblestone, or that a beach excursion required a short water entry that assumed a level of mobility that not everyone on that tour had. If you have any joint concerns, balance issues, or mobility considerations, read the full excursion description carefully, not just the summary line. Look specifically for mentions of stairs, uneven surfaces, water entries, standing time, and distance walked. If the description is vague, call the cruise line before sailing and ask specifically. A tour that pushes you past your physical comfort is not a vacation. It is a stressful and potentially painful experience that could have been avoided with 5 minutes of advance reading. Mistake number 3 is underestimating how long it actually takes to get off the ship at a tender port. This one catches passengers out repeatedly, and it has a direct impact on the value of every excursion they have booked for that day. At a tender port, where the ship anchors offshore and passengers take small boats to land, the process of getting ashore takes significantly longer than people expect. On a busy sea day at a popular Caribbean port, the wait for a tender can run 45 minutes to over an hour before you even step onto land. If you have an independent excursion booked that departs from a specific meeting point at 9 in the morning and you do not factor in tender time, you can miss it entirely and lose your booking fee with no recourse. If you have a ship-sponsored excursion, those passengers get priority tender access. They board before the general queue forms. That is one of the genuine advantages of booking through the ship in tender ports specifically. Know which of your ports require tendering before you sail and build that time into your morning plan. Your cruise line's app will show the port schedule and tender arrangements. At a tender port with a ship-sponsored excursion, your priority boarding time will be listed on your excursion ticket. Follow it precisely as groups move on a tight schedule. An extra 30 minutes of buffer at any tender port is never wasted. Mistake number 4 is the one I promised, and it is about independent excursions and what happens if your tour runs late. The cruise ship will not wait for you. This is stated clearly in every independent excursion disclaimer, and it is absolutely enforced. I witnessed passengers miss the ship at port. It happens. A traffic delay, a tour that ran over schedule, a flat tire on a bus in a remote area. These are all real scenarios that play out on cruise itineraries. When it happens, the passenger is responsible for their own transportation to the next port at their own expense. That can mean a last-minute flight, a hotel stay, and a taxi across a foreign country, all arranged in a panic without any ship assistance. The cruise line's shore excursion guarantee, which promises the ship waits if their tour causes the delay, only applies to tours booked directly through the ship. If you prefer independent tours, which can absolutely be the right financial decision, apply one firm rule. Never book an independent excursion that does not give you at least 90 minutes of buffer time before the ship's all-aboard deadline. 90 minutes sounds like a lot until the bus hits unexpected traffic 15 kilometers from the pier. Coming up is mistake number 7, the one involving excursion cancellations that costs passengers money they never expected to lose, and it happens because of a policy buried in the fine print that almost nobody reads before they book. Mistake number 5 is booking an excursion that duplicates what you can do independently for free. Some port destinations are genuinely best explored through a structured tour. Archaeological sites with limited access, remote natural areas, and experiences that require a guide all fall into this category. But other ports are compact, walkable, and fully navigable on your own, with nothing more than a phone and 30 minutes of advance research. In ports like Nassau, Cozumel, Juneau, and several popular Mediterranean stops, many of the activities included in mid-range ship excursions, beach access, town walking tours, local market visits, can be done independently, without a guide, and without a fee. If an excursion's primary appeal is simply visiting a location, rather than accessing something that requires a guide, special entry, or transportation that is genuinely difficult to arrange independently, research whether you can reach that location on your own before you pay the ship's price for the organized version. In many popular ports, the ship's basic town tour covers ground that is fully walkable with a free map from the port welcome desk. Save the excursion budget for ports where a guide or organized transport genuinely adds something you cannot replicate independently. Mistake number 6 is not checking the cancellation policy before booking. Ship-sponsored excursions typically require cancellation a certain number of hours before the tour departs in order to receive a refund, often 48 to 72 hours. Many passengers book excursions early in the cruise and then decide to cancel closer to the port date, assuming they can do so at any point. When they find out the cancellation window has passed, the booking fee is non-refundable. Independent third-party excursions have their own cancellation policies that vary widely, and some are entirely non-refundable from the moment of booking. Read the cancellation terms before you confirm any excursion purchase. If the policy is unclear, ask the excursion desk directly and get the answer in writing through the ship's app or a printed confirmation. This is particularly important on longer cruises, where you are booking multiple ports in advance and circumstances can change. Mistake number 7 is the one I mentioned, and it involves what happens to your excursion booking when the ship cannot dock at a port due to weather or operational decisions. Ports get skipped. It is a reality of cruising that most passengers acknowledge abstractly, but do not fully plan for. When a port is canceled by the cruise line, ship-sponsored excursion bookings are automatically refunded in full. That part most passengers know. What they do not always know is that independent excursion bookings through third-party companies are subject to those companies' own cancellation policies, which may not include a refund for missed ports caused by the ship's itinerary change. Some independent operators are generous about this and will issue full refunds. Others will not. Before booking any significant independent excursion, specifically check whether the company offers a refund if the ship cancels the port. If their policy is ambiguous or unfavorable, that is a meaningful factor in the decision between booking independently versus through the ship for that particular stop. Mistake number 8 is grouping too many activities into a single port day. This one is driven by enthusiasm and the feeling that a port day is a limited window that needs to be maximized. But a packed port day itinerary, excursion in the morning, independent lunch, walking tour in the afternoon, shopping before return, that works perfectly on paper, often falls apart in practice due to timing gaps, transit time between locations, and the reality that things take longer than planned. For passengers over 60 especially, a port day that involves 3 or 4 separate activities often ends in exhaustion rather than enjoyment. One well-chosen excursion, followed by genuinely relaxed time at your own pace, tends to produce a far better experience than an optimized schedule that leaves no room for anything to run even slightly over time. Give each port day one clear priority and build in at least one completely unscheduled hour where you are free to sit, eat something local, or simply enjoy being somewhere new without a timeline attached to it. That hour often becomes the memory you take home more than anything on the official itinerary. Let everything beyond your main priority be a bonus rather than a requirement, and your port days will feel like the vacation they are supposed to be, rather than a logistics exercise. Mistake number 9 is ignoring the ship's daily program notes about port conditions on the day of arrival. The ship publishes updated port information each morning: sea state at tender ports, weather conditions, pier distance from town, any known local situations that affect excursion timing or availability. Many passengers skip this section and head straight to the excursion meeting point without any of that context. Knowing that the pier is a 20-minute shuttle ride from the town center, for example, changes how you plan your buffer time for an afternoon excursion return. Knowing that a particular beach is closed due to weather conditions means you can ask the excursion desk about modifications or alternatives before your tour departs, rather than discovering the situation when you arrive. 2 minutes of reading the daily program's port notes every port morning is a simple habit that produces consistently better port days. Mistake number 10 is not traveling with copies of all excursion confirmations in a format that does not require internet access. At port meeting points, cell service is often unreliable. Ship app connectivity outside the ship's Wi-Fi range is inconsistent. Passengers who arrive at an excursion meeting point with their confirmation stored only in a cruise line app or a cloud-based document and then cannot access it due to signal issues create unnecessary complications for themselves and for the tour operator. Before every port day, screenshot your excursion confirmations or print them at the ship's business center the evening before. This is a 30-second task that eliminates an entire category of port morning stress. Keep them in a small travel folder along with your ship card and a photo ID. You will move through every meeting point more quickly and with complete confidence. Mistake number 11 is the one I want to end on because it is the broadest and in many ways the most important. It is not doing any research on the port itself before the ship arrives. Many passengers approach each port as a passive experience. They board a tour, they are taken somewhere, they are brought back. And there is nothing wrong with that approach if it genuinely suits you. But the passengers I watched have the most consistently rewarding port experiences were the ones who had spent even 30 minutes before sailing learning the basic layout of each port. Which neighborhoods were worth the walk? Which local food was worth seeking out? What the weather typically looked like at that time of year, and whether there were any specific local customs or considerations worth knowing about. That preparation does not require a research project. A travel guide app or a quick read of a blog post about that destination is enough. The passengers who arrive with even a basic mental map of a port get far more out of every stop than those who arrive completely cold and follow the crowd. You now have every tool you need to handle shore excursions the way experienced cruisers do. Compare prices before you book, read the physical requirements carefully, build your timing buffer at tender ports, and do 30 minutes of research on every port before you arrive. None of this takes much time. All of it makes a real difference. If this helped you, hit like and subscribe. Safe sailing.